All right, so let's start with the big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour, where tens of thousands of security personnel from the National Guard and the law enforcement agencies have now descended on the U.S. Capitol. And Washington, D.C. is now starting to resemble a bit like a ghost town ahead of Joe Biden's inauguration. Security has been bolstered in other state capitals as well ahead of Wednesday's presidential inauguration ceremony, following an FBI warning of armed protests. More than a dozen states have activated National Guard troops to help secure their capital buildings. The capitals in the battleground states where Trump has directed his accusations of voter fraud are especially on high alert. A small group of Donald Trump supporters gathered outside the Michigan state capitol in Lansing. 4 of those protesters also carried long rifles with them. Meanwhile, in Columbus, armed protesters from Boogaloo Boys, which is an anti-government group, gathered outside of the Ohio State Capitol. The building is under high security ahead of U.S. President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration. And also several dozen people gathered at South Carolina's State House. Some carried American flags. The group included Donald Trump supporters who briefly interacted with another group of demonstrators. Now, more demonstrations are expected in the lead-up to President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration. Mike Pence, meanwhile, has visited the U.S. troops on his final trip as vice president. Residents of the U.S. Capitol find the security build-up pretty eerie. And for them, the heavy military deployment in the city is reportedly unsettling.
I hope everything just goes smoothly and calmly with no hiccups. I hope nobody comes from either side because of COVID and everything else. So I hope it's just an easy and simple transition.
It's quite eerie. It's quite eerie to see so many National Guard vehicles parked cutting all the streets. We just wanted to have a walk and see how things are like right now, and it's really eerie. It's not a feeling that I like, especially for a day like the 20th. And coming from abroad, it's unsettling.
It's definitely different downtown, seeing everyone with like large guns and tanks and things like that, and people have had trouble commuting into the city for sure because of all the blockages and things like that. So yeah, I think it's been more quiet so far the past 5 days.
And also our correspondent Susan Tehrani has been tracking the developments very closely, and she sent us this report about the build-up of security just ahead of Joe Biden's inauguration. Take a look.
As the United States wakes up to inauguration week, an air of anxiety hovers over Washington, D.C. and state capitals across the country as they brace themselves for the possibility of renewed violence after the storming of the U.S. Capitol building on January 6th. In an unprecedented inauguration security operation, thousands of U.S. National Guard troops have been sent to Washington, D.C. The Secret Service is leading these security operations, and by Wednesday, 25,000 U.S. National Guard troops are expected to be in the nation's capital, 5 times more than the number of troops in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. Meanwhile, after FBI warnings, airports and commercial airlines are heightening their security efforts. There will be an increased number of federal marshals on airlines and bomb-sniffing dogs at airports. Here in New York, while there has been no credible threat so far, security has been beefed up in the state's capital in Albany. And of course, New York City remains on high alert at least until Inauguration Day.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.